Welcome to the Pete Delatorre Business Program and the Great Florida Bank Entrepreneurial Hour.
Good morning, South Florida. This is Pete Delatorre, and this is not a recording. I'm coming live. Now on the line, I have a very good friend of mine. I haven't seen him in a long, long time, and actually got a call from him about a month or so ago. His name is Nick Schklair. He's an author of 2 books and 145 articles, but the one we're going to be discussing today is called In Search of the Silver Bullet, How to Best Fund, Found, and Operate a New Business. Now, a little bit about Nick. He was originally born, he was from New York, educated at St. John's University, then Dartmouth College. He served in the Air Force, and along with that, he just, he's just through the years has been developing businesses. He's an entrepreneur. He's a technology guy. I mean, he's got the full package, and it's really in tune with what's going on here today. And it did lead him to writing this book, In Search of the Silver Bullet. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to bring on the show Nick Schklair. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Pete. It's great to speak to you again.
Thanks for coming here, buddy. How did you come up with the title for your book?
Well, a lot of people believe somehow that there's a silver bullet when they want to start a business. They think that there's a single thing that makes them successful. They just have to find that bullet, shoot that bullet, and they're on and off to the races and they're done. Now, if you ask many people who come from the large world of business, in other words, big business enterprise, typically you ask them about little or small business, they would say to you something like, well, really, what is small business all about? And they would say, isn't it about small people? The fact is, and that's, I'm joking there, but the fact is most people don't understand that starting, funding, and founding a business, a small business, is very, very different from running a large business. It's very obvious. So the idea, coming up with this idea, was to kind of isolate what it takes to do it and then offer very, very concrete, tangible steps as to how somebody can go about and operate a business, starting from the very basic, thinking the idea up and then carrying it all the way through. So I offer a kind of a pathway to success. What
inspired you to write it?
Well, I've been a serial entrepreneur many times, and I've kind of thought it out. I'm a fairly good writer, and I've always had the urge to write. And the fact is that I've seen a lot of people, and what happens to a lot of folks, they get into an idea. They think, let me just start a business. And even starting a business, very fundamentally, let's say a hot dog stand, still requires planning. Most people jump into a business without really giving it serious thought. And unfortunately, it requires, work. And in order to get success, the only time success precedes work is in the dictionary. But the fact is that you have to plan it out. And I felt that there was a dearth. There's not enough people out there who really plan things out. And I offered that book in order to give some aid and support to the people who want to start a business. And just show them there's an easy way to do it and there's a hard way to do it. The hard way is not to plan.
Now, what are the 4 typical major failures?
The typical failures is, one, obviously, a failure to plan. Failure to keep books. Too little upfront money and not paying attention to cash flow. That's typically what causes a lot of people to sink. But usually the fundamental one is to forget about planning.
And I think that applies to everyone, whether they have a business or they're an employee, is you've got to plan out your the long, mid-term, and short-term action plan. And create your personal GPS as to where you want to go. What would you consider the 3 major takeaways from the book?
Well, the first thing is the things that you have to do up front. That's one. Got to do these things up front. Number 2 would be, where can you get some free help? And that's kind of a list of questions and a checklist of the things that you need to do. Now, there's an old friend of mine. He used to say that when you start a business, you never really fail. You just reinvent yourself. And that's the genius of small business. They're very agile and able to reinvent themselves. So I would say the 4 takeaways is how to reinvent yourself.
Well, that's a great point. My company, the Renatas Group, the name Renatus is Latin for born again, and my inspiration, and I think we're on the same wavelength, is the fact that especially after this and it's not even totally completely over, the recession. I mean, we're kind of into the 6th year of all of that, even though things have improved a lot. There's still segments of the market that are still hurting, but it's the fact that we really truly have to not only embrace the idea of reinventing ourselves, and to be reinventing ourselves ongoing. This is not one thing you do, once every 5 years, because this world is moving so fast, and it's definitely as directly related to technology. So we've got to embrace that idea and then learn some skill sets to be able to do that. So I think that this last point is it's kind of always been there, but I think it's more important than ever.
Well, you're absolutely right. In the various business ventures, as you said, I think, I'm a serial entrepreneur. The fact is I started out in one business, the advertising business, but actually having been in technology forever and a day, actually right in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. And then moving on, I got into, after technology, I was working for a large company, and moving on, I went into advertising. And then from advertising, ultimately, I went to starting an online service, essentially taking listings on the internet for real estate. And then I moved on then into something else, and I eventually got into ERP software, which is kind of accounting software on steroids, I guess. And but the point was in fact that's how we first got to know each other, when we were on the business council.
Yep.
And then I moved. Eventually, I started a manufacturing company in veterinary products. And then I started writing the book. So I've just got into writing articles or writing books. And the fact is that you move on from one thing and learn something all over again and invent yourself. You become a manufacturer, become a consultant, become anything you say you're going to become.
Now we got a couple of minutes left in our segment. Do you think that this economy, which is still sluggish, is it a good time to start a business?
Oh, well, I would say not just yes, but hell yes. I mean, a bad economy gives you the unexpected opportunities. It's all about profit and loss. In other words, somebody else's loss, they go out of business, could be the profit for somebody who buys things relatively inexpensively. Rents are lower. There's all kinds of employees are, I hate to say it, cheaper. I mean, there are less people right now working than in 2007, so there's lots of good talent around. People would be just dying to take a job, and people ought to go out and reach out and offer people who are unemployed a hand. And there's just so much right now that happens. And the fact is, though, that a lot of times people are waiting, and they're saying, I'm going to wait until it gets better. Well, you know what? You could wait, but a lot of times the light at the end of the tunnel, they just forgot to pay their bill, and it's out. So you've got to do things now.
No, and that is absolutely right on the money. It's about doing it now. We don't have the luxury of waiting and let's see if things get better. We've got to really step back and say, enough. I'm going to be proactive. And not only that, but I'm going to not just think out of the box, but I'm going to implement out of the box. To kind of wrap it up here this morning, Nick, what one final piece of advice, and you have so much to share, and that's why we want to drive people to get your book, and please let us know how we can get a copy or look at it. But what one piece of advice would you like to share with the aspiring entrepreneur?
Before anybody does anything, if they're going to go into it, plan out what you want to do, and make sure you don't ask your coworkers if you happen to be employed, because your coworkers really don't want you to succeed. Don't ask your friends. Ask a trusted advisor. Ask somebody who really knows.
Right.
Don't necessarily ask an accountant or a lawyer, because they're essentially that if they were in your business, they would be competing with you.
Right.
In other words, ask a trusted advisor, somebody that you can trust, somebody like yourself, for instance.
That's great. And how do we get a copy of your book?
Okay, it's available. You can just do a Google search for "In Search of the Silver Bullet" with my crazy last name, which is spelled SCHKLAIR, and it pops up in a in a paperback form or also an electronic form, and it's available anywhere. So they can just go there or go to my website, which is bzzub.com. That's www.b z as in zeta zzub.com. Or businessunderbelly.com is another website that you can buy it on as well.
Well, Nick, this has been terrific, my friend, and we gotta get you back at some point soon talk more about the book and some of your other ideas, because I know you've been involved in so many different organizations to help entrepreneurs. You've got so much knowledge, but I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us this morning.
Well, Pete, thank you so much. I look forward to eventually to getting down to South Florida again. I've just been up here in the way north stretches of Florida where it's kind of, well, it's not cool now, but it tends to be really cool in the wintertime.
Absolutely. I know how it is, and it's a really great part of the state there. So, my friend Nick, thank you so much.